We can start.
It's 90, so
Should
he
we wait
can
for
talk
Christine?
about whatever he
Well,
wants.
that's my couple of words.
I mean, she's going, I know she's printing the document.
Bring in which document?
About Criscuolo's.
Oh,
They sent the
We'll
email.
bring them back.
I think all you guys have it by email.
I would have
Have a
if
binder?
they had informed me.
here you
It's
go.
okay.
It's the same one we got a while ago.
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
It's red and black. It's a red line.
Is it the same for the HO?
I have made my own little changes, but I thought this would be a time that I would be discussing with the commission, and then we would do whatever change you wanted. It's a typical document, it's a living document. Every time I read it, I want to add a little bit here and there, and I'm sure you all have your opinions about the changes I've made or proposed.
How do you want to start at the beginning of it?
Oh, wait, but does anybody, I don't have one. I can share it. You don't have yours. Do we have yours? Oh, you do? Oh, okay, let's go. I feel like we should tell Christine not to print them, but I think we probably won't do that now.
We'll congratulate her for her diligence.
Yeah, sir. Okay.
Will you tell me how you want to proceed, and we'll go down that road?
I think the best thing, well, we should really say that Leslie's running the meeting, but I think you should go down it and see what things, what
Okay.
your opinion on things, and
Right.
good, bad, indifferent, what should be added or not.
Maybe let me
ask
just,
you-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to ask a very general question, which is, there was prompt for doing this?
Yes, it's obviously because any sort of grading activity would have to go through Section 7. And I think what we're trying to do is, Section 7 is a pretty good document, and I felt that we could take that document, change a little bit, and make it more refined, so it's more meaningful, and not wasting the commission's time with duplicate efforts, if I may put it that way, because
And Bob, are you mean Section 7 of our present regulations?
that is correct.
As opposed to Section 10 of the draft that Leslie prepared, right?
And I'm not in tune with the current, I have it
Section
actually,
X, I know it
There's no section 10.
right.
was. Well, there's one that says Section X.
Yes, you're,
And that means I'm a little bit behind, because when we first met, probably 3+ months ago, I thought it was 7 was turning into 3. So whatever the number is, the number is.
Right.
But I've taken 7 as a guide, and I've tuned it up, if I may. So, having said all that, I could go through proposed changes, if you want.
Yes.
Okay. So, what was 7.1, which I believe will be your 4.1?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Can you identify yourself so I can
Yes.
who's speaking?
For the record, my name is Robert Criscuolo. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor, and a consulting engineer to the commission probably since the year 2000. And I've been working with the excavation and removal and filling and grading and processing for many years, and I guess it's my chance maybe to polish it up a little bit. And leave my mark. So anyway, 3.1, you should have a document, which what I did was I retyped the document. In black, I believe, is pretty much the wording of your section, current Section 7, and in red is my proposed changes. And the first paragraph, 3.1, I think is pretty straightforward unless you have questions. I've just added special use permit, which is a public hearing.
Some of I went through it and I marked up a couple of things which I will give to Chris, or whatever you want. I mean, like, for instance, that are just technical things. For instance, in 3.1, your reference to 3.1 really should be a reference to 3.2,
Okay?
except as permitted by section 3.2.
Agreed.
But stuff like that, which is,
All right, and for me, there's very important parts of this that I think we should consider. And I was really gonna get into the exemptions, which was
Yes.
3.2, which I wrestled with for quite a bit. I've added all that red that basically says that all earthwork, soil disturbance does not result in off-site sediment, flooding, erosion, any exceptions, and you can see as it goes along, doesn't give them the right, to skirt wetlands, your commission and DEP and the Army Corps. So I thought that was pretty straightforward.
It should be do not.
Do not, correct.
Literally, it says does, it should be do. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
Just,
typos and things like that.
okay, so did you get this? We should compare and then you continue.
In the
Talking about
act,
grammar.
Hmm?
Talking about grammar.
Some of it's grammar, but if
Is
it's not
there-
the right grammar, it says
so-
what you don't want it to say.
Is the word obtainment, is that a new word for me? I usually know most.
I mean, I
words.
can't tell what's a new word for you. I think it's a real word.
Is that a real word?
I think it is.
I'm not
I don't
sure.
know all the words in the,
What, attainment?
Obtainment.
I got my dictionary.com here, I'm gonna look at it.
You should look that up. Okay.
Of course you would have your dictionary there.
I get a word of the day, man. Some of them are pretty
Yes.
funny.
They
On
are
certain
good.
days, they really
They are
make a
good.
lot of sense. Well, they're easy.
That's
question
good.
on your exemptions,
Yes,
I don't know if you want to go through.
I did.
Oh, fine. You go in and then I'll ask.
Okay, and I thought A, farming made sense.
Yes.
I thought B, site grading for landscaping, as long as the disturbance area does not exceed 5,000 square feet. I wanted to add and limits indicated in C 1.3 below. And for me, item number C, earth material movement for the following volumes was something that I wrestled with. Your current regulation allows 1,000 cubic yards to be disturbed, moved, brought in, as long as it's an area of less than 10,000 square feet, which is less than a quarter acre. So I added one, I thought 100 cubic yards maximum for parcels 1 acre or less, and 200 cubic yards per acre for parcels 2 to 5 acres, and then 1,000 cubic yards maximum for parcels over 5 acres. Because I've struggled with that, and it seems like 1,000 cubic yards on a very small parcel is a lot of impact.
Yeah.
So those things really should be thought about,
And
and
right now, we only have the 1,000 cubic yard thing.
you have 1,000 cubic yards for an area less than 10,000 square feet.
What happens with the normal lot size of an acre and a half? It's not covered.
It is not, and an acre and a half?
Acre and a half. You have 1 acre
Okay.
or less, and then you have 2 to
Fair,
5, but
fair.
nothing in between 1 and 2.
100
Fair-
and
fair.
Most of
less
ours
than
are
two.
acre and a half.
Right, that's a good point.
Very good point.
Could do
So-
this one as less than two.
So we could say Leslie's right, less than 2.
Okay, so it's
Very good
less than
point.
2 point. Okay, that's right.
Now, does this then, if you're outside that, does that then come to the commission?
Yes.
For discussion?
Yes, correct.
So is there any administrative opportunity at all about it coming to the commission?
I believe there is, and I think it's a normal part of an application that goes through Terry's office to review and part of the issuance of a building permit.
But I'm saying, but once you've reached 100 cubic yards for the acre and a half,
Right?
okay?
No, it's
then-
less than two,
Less
it's less
than
than
two.
two.
Okay, for less than 2. Then you're
Not exempt.
not exempt, so you
Correct.
can't do anything, so it's gotta come to us.
That is correct.
I mean, we've been talking in terms of a lot of the regs, just generically,
Right.
about trying to have some things that are a little more efficient, so that
Right.
we don't always have to have hearings for each and everything. I'm just wondering, while we're brainstorming, whether or not in other communities that you may be familiar with, that there is some way for the ZEO to be involved before the P&Z gets involved, some nominal level.
This is how you do
it.
it. This is how you do it.
Well, it seems to me that 100 cubic yards over 2 acres is actually pretty small. Seems to me, but that's-
It is, but it excludes the excavation of a foundation for a home,
Right, okay.
which, you know, a average house is maybe 75 or 85 feet long, 30 feet wide, 8 feet deep, I believe, is about 600 yards of material.
So you could address it by saying in number 1, just as you've said less than 2 acres, you could say anything less than 200 cubic yards would be maximum for parcels less than 2 acres. That is proportional, right? Sort of.
You could do that.
Is it,
Well, it's not exactly proportional because this latter is 2 to 5 acres,
Yeah,
right.
but the point is you're not,
Right, and to put this in perspective, 100 yards, 20 yards a truck, so you got 5 trucks, that's the kind of volume that you're looking at.
and that's, as you say, it doesn't include the foundation.
That is correct. So I thought that was fair for typical grading of a site. But if you read on, I've excluded
Also, septic system.
the fill for a septic system, which could be a lot. That could be several hundred to 300 cubic, 400 cubic yards.
Easy.
In town, we have soils that have very shallow restrictive layers, and you will find you have to purchase a lot of select fill, which is bank run gravel. So I excluded that. So it's actually a little bit more.
About the same.
And we don't want to capture in a
Yes.
public hearing setting the installation
Select
and
fills,
repair of the
yes.
septic system, because that's an urgent matter.
Oh,
Right.
Is there-
Gravel fill sand.
Is there anything in here about slopes, disturbing slopes?
Eventually, I've addressed that.
later on.
Yes. Then I've excluded, obviously, maintenance of roads.
isn't, question, E, isn't F, E within F already?
Well, but
No,
it
E and
has
F.
driveways.
It's the next one.
I believe you're absolutely right that that can be combined.
So in effect, take out E, because it really is, F encompasses everything.
Do they? Because E, it says as required. Well, I mean, it says that as required and conducted, but aren't.
This all
just
construction and
sometimes-
maintenance activities that are to be performed by the town of Woodbridge.
Sure, but is a driveway ever required to be repaired by the town that the town doesn't do? That's my point.
No, that are
Absolutely.
performed.
I know, but that's, right, but I'm saying in E, it doesn't have to, it could say required and/or conducted. Because my point is that a driveway repair might be required by the town that the town's not gonna do, the homeowner is. And so where is that covered?
Oh, no, this
It's not
is,
exempted.
it's not exempted. Because it has to be, E, as it was written, has to be conducted by the town of Woodbridge. Public Works.
So what about the thing that?
You're saying something
I'm saying something
Yeah.
different.
totally,
Okay, and I was thinking on E, we would add "or the state of Connecticut"
that's,
to give them the right to do the roads and drainage culverts as
Because
required.
they're going to do it.
They're not
do it anyway.
They're not gonna
That's correct.
ask. I promise you, they're not gonna ask.
Okay, so that may
Yeah,
be,
they're not
we're
gonna
asking
ask.
a different question about what happens if they have to repair the driveway.
Right, but if the town says to somebody they have to repair their driveway, and the town's not gonna do it, then it's not exempt. But shouldn't it be?
Is the town ever requiring, I'm asking, someone to repair their driveway?
The only time it happens is when and it's a small scale thing, is when we re-asphalt a road and we do aprons
Right.
adjacent to the road, but,
And then the town doesn't.
right, but, you know, let's think in the worst case scenario, that a private driveway is subject to great erosion and is required to be in a private party, and the town has no interest in the matter. I'm thinking of a wetlands application that we did on Center Road, a long driveway, big erosion. You know, if that would have required more than 100 cubic yards of.
It would have been two.
I see what you're saying.
So I don't know, maybe that sort of thing needs to come, the private parties need to come here. I mean,
Right, and I would look at that it would be up to, it'd be up to line item C, because they've exceeded that threshold, and then you'd have the right to require an application, which the board would review and add comments to.
So the state standards, there's a trigger for, a traditional trigger in state regulation for siltation installation devices.
Yes,
What was that? Was that a half acre?
yes.
How many square feet in a half acre?
Half acre is
A little less than one.
1,000.
a little bit less, 43,560 square feet in 1 acre. So a little bit less than 22.
Okay. Many times, I mean, a lot of this stuff matters because of, the details matter of how this is going about doing it. The first thing we look for is siltation fencing. That's the 101 stuff.
Right.
One other consideration is if you have a driveway near a lot line and you are adding fill that could result in increased runoff, I'm just posing the question.
Well, if you're following the outline of section 7, there was fill near a lot line that you may have incorporated in this.
There is some language about that as we go along, correct.
So we may be able to visit that
Great.
at that point.
All right, so, I
So
agree
are we
that,
leaving E and F other than
I
heading
think
for the state?
E and
benefit?
F could be rewritten to be combined. Okay, G is obviously activities associated with the landfill. And H is one that,
What would we still,
Yeah,
what are we doing up with the landfill that we were,
it's always been in your regulations, I believe, and I left
that
it
was
in.
when it was a big hole in the ground, they would fill it up with dirt. Now they have dumpsters and you fill it in dumpsters and they take it to another town.
Okay,
Because,
transfer
the only reason I
station
kind of stopped this there because if you want to think about the landfill, it's all baseball fields now.
right.
So I'm thinking probably,
Unless there needs to be some maintenance at times. To slopes and the like, and I know that we've walked that wetland corridor,
We've
and
spent some time on that, near that land.
so I left it in. I didn't think it would hurt, but it's up to your decision on whether you want to take it out or not.
all right, I was just trying to make sure everybody's.
So do we have a landfill? We don't have an active landfill, do we?
We don't have an active landfill, we have a transfer station.
Right.
However, we have a capped landfill
Right.
that we spend gobs of money on.
So it's the-
Do you specify
methane
that
and
it's
the-
that
All that stuff,
landfill?
right. Plus the effluent from it, we have settling ponds,
That's probably what I'm doing.
fluid downstream.
So we should leave it in.
It says operations, we just want to say the town of Woodbridge cap landfill.
Yeah, and Leslie's point is to point out that, that specific landfill as opposed to, so we only have one landfill, we should point out that it's that.
So we just changed sanitary to cap.
Yeah.
Operation.
Okay, H.
Yeah, could you explain that? What is it supposed to be covering?
H is,
It's just, if an application has been made, all of this should be already covered in the application.
it's
That's the
something,
exemption.
it's something that I'm reviewing anyway, or you're reviewing,
So why?
and
We were exempting it because
It's
it's
exempt.
very specific.
Huh?
It's exempting it, so you don't have to make two
There's
applications. in
redundancy.
one.
Oh, okay.
It's okay to be redundant.
It's
So-
already a part of the application we're reviewing.
And some of your members will remember you've had occasion to hear two public hearings, one on this and on the others.
I think the first public hearing I ever attended was on that, with the Woodbridge Village Associates project. I was so
Correct.
confused. It was like, what? We're talking,
Absolutely right. That should have been one application for the site plan. And we would address the sedimentation and erosion control at this, that one time, rather than having redundancy and having two hearings.
And
So that's what I was trying to do in H, which is normal.
That's good.
And then the other thing that happened was, because the excavation permits have a shorter duration, that's expired, and then it can't get renewed beyond 1 year, where you've got a site plan that can go up to 10 years.
Especially given the whole thing got changed, so you can go even further.
Yeah.
Oh my.
So, this way it would link, it would be covered by the site plan review, and it would time itself accordingly.
It's a good thing.
Okay, and I refers to subdivision roadways, and those go through quite a bit because everyone I've been involved with has a wetland component to it, and it gets thoroughly thought about for erosion control and drainage and everything else, so I thought that also would be a redundant application. And obviously with a roadway, there's a lot of grading activity. You're gonna exceed those thresholds the first day of work. All right, if I could, going to application requirements to the bottom B, I've cleaned up what you should be getting for surveying. Certified to horizontal accuracy A2 and topographic survey accuracy class T2. And I give a reference which we all, as land surveyors, actually practice by.
The only thing I suggest there, does this reference document data get updated every now and then?
Yes,
Then you have to put in language as it may be updated from time to time. Yeah, the normal type of stuff. Otherwise, we have to,
Revise it every time.
either that or go back to the old one.
Right.
So T2 is what,
it is a, T2 is a degree of accuracy, and when you do a test and you do a profile and you're publishing 2-foot contours, you can't be off by more than 1 foot.
okay.
And what I see coming in sometimes is I can't tell where it's coming from. It could be off of an aerial, which is allowed, and we'll get into that here, without a classification, and that could be, you're not seeing the full picture when you get that. When someone needs to stamp A2, T2, you're getting more of an accurate plan.
We've had difficulties in, there are surveyors, not in this room, that,
Well, that's good.
that take municipal topographic information that is done by GIS information that is, in some areas of town, off more than a foot.
Inaccurate.
Could be off 5 to 10 feet in some areas.
And we've had some unpleasant results of that.
So I haven't seen other towns, I'm familiar with a lot of really other towns, and I haven't seen the class T2 used as a standard in
I
other
believe
towns,
it's-
which I think is very useful for us, and I think makes a lot of sense.
All right, so going on, I'm basically asking for adjacent properties within 100 feet. Can we spell that out? On 2, talk about specifying the total volume of materials to be removed from the site and the destination of such materials. I think that's important.
Absolutely.
Because it leads into the point of where is it going and what roads are they going down, and it's a discussion of the public hearing. Okay.
Do you want to ask, in that same one, do you want to ask for a travel map?
A who? Oh, a travel pen.
So that you
I
can-
think down the
is it
road
in
I do that.
Okay.
Let's
I
let's
looked
see.
at so many
Keep that
sets of
thought.
regulations that I
Keep
can't
that thought and make sure that I've
remember
included
what's
that.
what.
Forests, I've just changed the location map to 1 inch equals 1,000, just so that you get a bigger picture of things when you look up in the right-hand corner. 6, I talk about cross sections and getting the contours and T2 standards. This is one that I've added and allow an aerial, but it needs to be certified to class T3, which is not what Terry was talking about. He was talking about what's called a TD, which is just an aerial taken from other places, other information, and is put on the plan and is certified. you get T3, you're almost getting T2 accuracy. So I think you want to allow that for a big parcel. Aerials are very, very accurate.
Is it problematic to just, is to keep it to class T2 as a surveyor with it? Are we putting a large burden on the
Unfair
surveyor?
burden. If someone's dealing with a site that's 50 acres or more, instead of having, a field party locate every contour, every hill and valley in that 50 acres, T3, you can do an aerial survey where you set up targets, it gets flown, and you're using a very good firm to come up with a contour map that is very accurate. So that classification is certified to T3.
But you also want TD, neither.
Now, TD is for off-site improvements. So, we're asking for information extending at least 50 feet beyond the land boundaries up on the third line, second and third line, which completes the picture. It will show improvements beyond and what the grading is like. So I think it's okay to show that as TD. That would be fair enough, but you'll find applicants will come in with T3 for that additional information, but I don't think it's a bad thing to add TD. So that's why I had written it that way.
So a TD would allow you to do that. You're basically taking information from somebody else's property and you don't need the right of access?
So I choose to do a field survey to T2, but I can't get on their land in their backyard to actually do T2 survey, and then I'm going to take that aerial and superimpose it around the perimeter to complete the picture for the commission. With enough accuracy, I think that would be acceptable. Not when you're doing grading and construction, you never should use a TD.
So will a mere mortal be able to tell the difference between a T2 or T3?
I believe we're asking for them to certify to that, Terry.
Okay, so
So we're looking to a higher power.
And maybe that should be clarified in here.
So what kind of off-site improvements do you think, give me an example of off-site improvements that might go along with those examples?
You have someone that comes in that's doing a grading plan and they have a 50-foot cut, 50 feet away from the property line. I would want you to see that there's a home, a horse barn within that 50 feet. Because you're going to look at that area a little bit more critically than not.
So off-site.
Off-site.
Means not the area you're working on. Is that what you mean?
Outside of the boundary of the
Adjoining property.
property. Correct.
But it's an adjoining property at all times.
That is correct. So 50 feet around the perimeter of the property.
So
It's good information.
a TD?
Licensed land surveyor would do that.
We do the TD as well as a
Yes.
T3?
That is correct.
It's
Yes.
going to send the drone up.
Pardon?
It's going to send the drone up.
We don't have
There are
airplanes.
We're getting close to that. Okay, next page, item number 7, I added detail. I think we're getting stuff sometimes that are not detailed, and I write reviews and I have to press the details, so I'm just trying to make my job a little bit easier. 9, the site grading plans shall show proposed vehicular access to the land and location of proposed work roadways within the land, and shall demonstrate safe intersection sight lines at state and town roads. So, for a gravel pit or a guy mining out earth materials, no one thinks about the sight lines. Now we're gonna make them do that. Because you're gonna have some trucks, a lot of trucks maybe, coming and going from the site.
We have that problem in our sign regulations, actually, sightlines.
So we presently, the state now is gotten more and more active in this realm. The sight lines, the driveways, you've seen them on state lines.
Right.
And so essentially what this adds is to local roads.
That is correct. Number 10, I've added traffic routes proposed for the duration of the operation. So I think that's in there.
Absolutely.
12, I've changed 75 feet to 100 feet.
And we can stand there and change that. If they come up with a proposal, we can, for a route, we can say that the route doesn't work because of X, Y, Z.
Right, can I just make
Yeah.
one comment on this one? That it
What I
include,
don't know.
same 110,
Okay,
that we include, because this is pretty all-encompassing for any trucks on the site, which is great, but that we make clear that it's also for any fill coming in or going out.
okay.
That part of the project often gets seen as we're special.
Number and types of trucks in or out.
All right, so number 13 is a new paragraph, and we see lots of applications without any sort of test pits or borings, and that leads to trouble, and it leads to a flawed understanding of what you're getting for a plan. So I asked for locations of deep test pits and/or soil borings, and that they be published on the site plan with the descriptions of the soils encountered, including groundwater tables if encountered, and rock profiles.
Correct the order.
Why do you put in deep test pits as opposed to just location of test pits?
That's
Is
just
there,
the
I
word.
don't know, I have no idea.
Well, as I understand it,
Yeah.
and Bob will correct me, is that, a deep pit test pit, you want to know that you're able to see the characteristics of the soil profile that you're working in.
Yes,
And whereas a test pit, then is only really concerned itself with the amount of percolation that it might have.
So a deep test pit can go 6 to 8 feet. It'll show you where ledge is. It'll show you where the water table is.
6 to 8 feet is deep.
yes.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
know, you're saying.
That's really what that's really
To
the main
me,
question here,
8
is
feet
trying to
is
figure out
deep.
the difference between a deep test pit and a test pit.
Test pit.
Or it could be deeper.
No, could be.
Don't
Could be.
confuse things here.
I'm trying to help.
By the way, this solves a common problem in the review of documents, because frequently people use such devices as infiltrators, and they try to put infiltrators in either rock or below water tables where they won't work, and so it's a common review comment that you get.
We see it all the time.
Right.
Because no testing is done at all. It's a rush to get that plan, to make the deadline, to get it before you guys, to get the approval.
I'm amazed at the number of jobs go through and no one's gonna test pits.
So hopefully this, if someone's going through this section, this should make it a better application for you, so you know what you're getting.
Better
How much-
project for the applicant too.
How much rock, how much water that you'll be dealing with.
Yeah, just as an aside, you had something we were doing in Shelton, where someone was looking to, put in a development and going through all of the requirements.
Right.
And one of the things they didn't bring in was information on deep test pits and soil borings. And the parcel itself was known to have been filled in over many years. And it known to have some wetlands in advance of that, and some water courses that may have been changed. And they were just trying to suggest that, it wasn't required. So therefore, they didn't have to go and do it. Of course, people picked it up and said, hold on. So it's best that they're here.
Yes. So 14 is really your old 13, and I've added that the wetlands be reviewed by a certified soil scientist.
Where are you trying to?
I'm on the 14,
Oh, yeah.
The new 14.
and I added certified soil scientist and surveyed by a land surveyor, rather than going out there with the GPS and having it appear on the map.
Now, we still, this wouldn't, if the work was exempted, as earlier exempted,
Yes.
this would not apply. Right?
Well, that's,
Definition, it couldn't apply.
So there are a number of soil surveys that are done for backyard stuff. Decks, pools, and it's near wetlands. And the soil surveyor makes a sketch. The septic installer could make a sketch. I don't want to catch everybody in this, just the stuff that we need to look at.
Well, if
This
it's
is for an
gonna,
application.
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
This isn't for anything that's exempt,
So-
it's just application
Right,
criteria.
So our exemptions would
So
say
if you
that
need
sort
a-
of stuff.
Yes, so you could still have someone doing a deck, hire a soil scientist, review it in the field, or have that sketch and then issue a permit if it's exempt. But if they're going down this road, we're requiring
Okay.
accurate
Yep.
flagging and surveying and an accurate plan.
Great.
I took your old 14, which is now 15, and I thought I just made it simpler. We're just looking for, details of existing and proposed drainage plan and systems proposed and the proposed stormwater management. And then I took out the part about erosion controls and I added 16. And I took that out of a guideline from the 2002 Connecticut Soil Erosion and Sedimentation Control Guidelines. And I wrestle with this with applicants all the time. They don't go down this basic part of checklist that should be addressed in every single plan. So you have been getting those because every comment that I've been doing, and I'm sure you're tired of reading the same comment, I'm trying to make my job easier by adding this.
I'm not tired of reading your comment.
Is this the comment that Alan made before? Should it also say something
Yeah,
like as
it has to.
amended?
or as applicable.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Usually as amended from time to time.
I think actually there is a line at the beginning of the
Yeah, it says
regulations,
it.
not this section, but a covered line at the very beginning that says, it covers all these things as they may be amended from
Right.
time to time, but I am making a note of it.
So we get to quiz applicants as to whether they heard it.
Whatever floats your boat.
It's interesting that after, there's been a lot of water underneath the dam on the 2002 erosion guideline, and we haven't seen any changes. They did it quite remarkable after the 2002.
I agree, no changes.
Right.
Item number 17 is something that I've been writing in all of my comments.
I don't understand what it is saying.
It says that it says the proposed plan shall contain requirements that the limits of disturbance shall be field staked.
Okay, that's what's missing.
That's what's missing.
Sorry.
Yes. Shall be prior to the,
Shall be field staked prior to
the start of
There we go.
construction, and then a letter certifying completion of said staking by a licensed land surveyor shall be provided to the town to confirm compliance with the record plan. And I do that because we get these plans and I don't know if they're getting staked, and I don't want Terry and Chris to go out there and try to guess on where things are. So you're putting the onus on the applicant, his engineer, you're getting a letter certified back that it's correct.
In the industry, they'd rather go to the dentist. than to-
So the proposed plan shall contain
Tough to
requirements
get
that the
to do
limits
that.
of disturbance are field staked. And that's where by the licensed land surveyor should have, I don't know, whatever.
However you
Because
want
it's
to
a
word
shop,
it.
yeah, I would just.
I just want to make sure it gets staked and we get a
Something
letter
gets in there.
certified.
Yeah, got it.
I've been
Great, got it.
having that added to every single plan that you guys see. The other one is also one that I've been requiring, which says prior to the start of the operation, certification shall be provided to the town from the design engineer, which states that the erosion and sedimentation control measures installed in the site were installed in conformance with their plan of record and to his design intent, and that no exceptions are taken.
I would
So,
change his.
Yes, I knew that.
I apologize.
You know, the latest is there, because then you don't have to worry about the gender specific things for,
Really?
I get that it's not grammatically,
I
now it's
can't- I
considered
can't
to be.
stand that. That
I
just
can't either,
makes
I don't
my
like it, but
skin
it's,
crawl.
but it's the gender neutral stuff. But anyhow,
So
just
and to-
acknowledge something
and to the
different.
design intent, design.
And to the, yeah, you could say,
And to
into the
the
design intent is
design.
fine.
So it's another set of eyes and a certification, and hopefully making
Yeah.
Terry's life a little bit easier.
So, I might add, you know, our fee structure involves the applicant paying for our costs to have it reviewed.
Yep.
And when they get a big bill for the review because their plan hasn't included this stuff, and Bob has to spend time doing this, we're gonna get better applications because they know what's going into this project, what it is. As an engineer, Bob, how does your insurance company feel about you certifying things? Do they allow you to certify?
Yes,
Okay,
never been an issue.
okay. I've had engineers say, well, I can't certify a thing. I'm not, my insurance coverage doesn't cover that.
Yeah. Well, that's quite not fair. They should be writing a letter on the date that they've looked at whatever's out there, that it is done in accordance with their plan, because quite frankly, they have liability when they do a plan and they show erosion controls and it's adjacent to a wetland or a neighbor's property. So they should be happy that we're requiring for them to go out there to look at it as part of their
There are
design.
people seeking to limit their liability by saying,
I see, and put it on whom? And I'm looking to make your job easier and limit the commission's exposure.
And just to be clear, you're talking about if he's working
Unless
as an
it's supposed to
independent
have
engineer, not certifying something that would come
stated
before
that.
the
Absolutely.
town.
right.
Yes.
So we could just
No,
say
there's
no.
no-
To be
So,
clear.
on the issue of substantial conformity, that's a good term of art.
that.
Yes, because there's always a little change, and that's typical with site plans and land, and that would be okay. So I would note it,
Otherwise it's.
and I would make the town aware of it, which I think would be standard. And that should be happening, I would think, on any job that you're on, that if there's a change, they're calling you up and they're telling Terry and Chris that there's been a minor change or a proposal different than what was approved.
Okay, so there would be an expectation.
Yes,
Someone would talk about variances, but they're not great, so therefore.
that is correct.
substantial conformity.
That is
Good,
correct.
all right.
But at the end of the large project, you also would be getting as-built,
Which now
you then
give you exactly
would be
the information.
comparing to what was actually built. And
So just so you know, Kathleen and I just kind of went through, and because all of these things are going back to the original section that says that the plan shall, we've been deleting where it starts off with about the plan, because this is all stuff that the plan is supposed to show.
Rating plan shall show, and it just starts with an M. It's just the style to make sure it's consistent.
So on 18, because otherwise it doesn't make sense, we thought it should say a note stating that prior to, the plan should have that note on it. And then that way, if they don't do it, we can say, did you read your plan?
A note stating that prior to the start of the operation, certification was provided to the town from
No,
the design.
shall be provided. The note is gonna stay that prior to the start of operation,
because you're
certification shall be
reviewing
provided.
it before it's been done,
Okay.
presumably.
Good catch.
And then the same thing with 19.
No, that looks okay, construction details, because it starts
Oh,
with an
okay.
M.
Okay.
Okay, so 19 is pretty straightforward. Additional information, I spent a lot of time on it.
Can we spend a lot of time in warehouse?
I thought this was all about that
Yeah, that's what it
thing we
seemed to
denied
be.
recently, right? Just making sure we do it right,
Right, so I've added,
for when it comes back to us, right?
No. when that's happening.
Well, before you go there, are the activities that we do on sites to satisfy the stormwater permit, requiring on-site treatment during construction intervals, this section never had that.
No, it did not. And I believe that the section was originally intended for grading a site, removing material to prepare it for something. Or
Or gravel.
sale material, gravel, rock, that sort of thing.
Right, but it's become something else over time.
By removing the site plan
Okay.
and that function, then we're getting them on the stormwater with that separate application.
Okay.
So I was looking at this as that it's grading a site for removal of material, or the site needed so much work it needed to go down this road to even prepare it for some type of application that you would see a commercial development along, commercial or industrial or something like that.
There's a renewed interest in stormwater permitting, it seems like. There was a, we had a burst of activity about 8 years ago, and lots of people fell asleep on it. We were still doing it, but now it's back.
Yep.
So I just want to have a path to that, and it may not, and this may not be the path, but it would be in our normal site plan approval, is what you're saying.
Right, unless I'm misunderstanding the section. And I thought it was all about, when we were down here, it's about preparing the site, removing material, processing rock, and selling it. I think that's what this is all about.
Okay.
But I would not object to adding something if you want to about stormwater. I think we do have some language in here, but we can,
And does it not does a quarry not need to process its own stormwater? I mean,
boil water is
yeah,
filled with contaminants,
right.
blasting materials and all sorts of stuff. It's very, very special.
Right.
I think that we can strengthen what's in here.
Okay.
So, one of my concerns about this section is I learned this the hard way. They had a difficult piece of property, they wanted to do a project, they wanted to know if they could come in with a special permit for just excavation and fill, basically to regrade the property so that they could then, they didn't have to worry about steep slopes, they didn't have to worry about all kinds of things. And so my strong recommendation, and if, again, it may be in here and I may just not be remembered, that anytime anybody's doing excavation and or fill in excess of what we have on page 1 or 2, that it be in conjunction with special exception permit for the project itself. So they're doing the work for the project. If the project is a rock quarry, that's one thing. That's fine, but it has to be.
I would personally be astonished if we find an application for a rock quarry.
I suspect so.
Right. But, I've been astonished before, I guess.
But if somebody owns property on the side of with a substantial slope and wants to make some money off of the gravel they can get out of there,
Oxford, what's the project that's being done up in Oxford in the quarry? They're basically selling the quarry to pay for the project.
Yeah, no, I see it.
So it's
I drove
amazing.
by, I was just amazed.
Yeah.
I remember driving around that rock forever.
Yeah, forever.
Right.
Unbelievable.
Is that captured by 7 where it says a detailed description of the purpose and nature of the proposed operation?
7 going backwards or forward?
Yeah, backwards. Because it doesn't say that it has to be a building project, it just says that it's one where excavation, grading, filling, or removal or processing shall occur.
And it's not exempt.
So, I mean, it could be in conjunction with site development. Or if they were just preparing the land for sale, they would have to say it.
But preparing the land for sale
I'm just
can
saying,
get you a piece of property that looks really different than the parcel that was bought.
Right, and it can impact the neighbors tremendously.
and this is a special permit, so that's one of the things they'd be able to consider, and they might say, well, no, because we need an actual use.
And I think we need to address stormwater. I agree 100%. Because you're taking a site, no matter what the size is, that has trees on it and you know, vegetation, and now you're excavating it. It could be down to rock, it could be down to bare earth, and it needs to be addressed in these regulations somehow.
Most towns
But
do
isn't-
deal with drainage.
Isn't it in 15?
Yes.
Details of existing and proposed drainage plan, including storm
Stormwater
drainage
management.
systems, proposed stormwater management. Right?
But
When you
maybe I
simplify.
want to say that pre versus post flows for the 1 to the 100 years need to be managed so that there's no increase.
Okay, so
It's
we're
that
gonna beef
simple.
that, we're
So
gonna
you
beef
beat
it up.
15 up.
Yes,
And does that cover then anything that happens when blasting occurs? Because,
Yes.
right?
yes, I
Cover.
think that's good.
Okay, so where do we have it?
We're going to, I'm going to modify 15 to talk a little bit more about what stormwater management means. We're going to set limits for the 100-year event such that pre-construction discharges equal post-construction. Because you're changing it. You're
That was
changing
too fast
potentially
for me.
from the
I can't
woodland to hard
I
compact
think it's huge.
soils with rock, and it can be huge. It will be huge if it's not addressed.
So, and that's an opportunity to reference back to that Connecticut Stormwater Manual, which is
Yes.
the other one.
Yes.
These are all things, by the way, that between Bob, between myself, and the staffer, is always looking at these applications with all this stuff in mind. It just hasn't been required in our regulations before. And we're concerned that if we all get hit by a bus,
But there are towns that do have all these requirements.
Absolutely.
A lot of them.
absolutely, I mean, we're required by law.
Yeah.
We're doing.
I mean, a lot of it comes up because a lot of towns are building much larger structures, so it becomes a much bigger issue.
But the town has a stormwater permit, and part of that stormwater permit, the obligation is on
Yeah.
this commission
Sure.
to make that
Yeah.
happen. And we have 2 years to do it.
That's interesting, it's a good point, is Bob aware that what we promised?
That's fine.
Now he is.
We should probably tell him that sometime.
I'll send you the stormwater thing, I will promise.
Okay.
Oh, big deal.
So,
State DEP is going around and auditing people's compliance with stormwater regulations.
towns.
And for the town of Woodbridge, we were doing all the activities. We were not, another agency in town was not reporting that we had done that. The good news is we were doing it. But, so we'll put you up to speed, and if you think upon reflection that anything needs to be part of that stormwater thing that you're realizing, that would be a good thing.
That would be great.
Mhm.
All right, so additional information is about rock excavation, and I've put in here that additional information and further reports by a licensed geotechnical engineer on soil, rock hardness, slope stabilities, of proposed rock and earth slopes, and groundwater conditions. I want them all addressed. They have to be addressed. And we've had experience where they needed to be addressed.
Do you care whether the geotech engineer's license to? Is that that's a state license? Or is it
You know what, we could state that it's a license, he's a licensed professional engineer.
So before you get to that.
Licensed
by the way,
professional geotechnical engineer.
There's some,
Is there a non-professional geotechnical engineer?
There are, well, when you become a professional engineer, you're supposed to practice within your expertise. So I could be a
But you're
professional
certified.
engineer, correct, but you'd want him to be a geotechnical rather than a structural.
I guess the word is professional necessary.
Yes.
Okay.
there's some text changes that we'll share with you, but Fire Marshal has one L and there is no Department of Public Safety. It's renamed to something else.
Oh.
All about town.
We'll get to that.
Okay, thank you.
So under that blast, you're there under C.
Can I just say, I don't know what the little C1 and the big C2, I think those headings need to be accurate, just your whole outline schema. Because I think it's under C in parentheses on the previous page.
It should be C1, yeah, I understand what
But
you're
it's got to
saying.
be one in
And then
parentheses.
further on. But what I don't understand on the blast plan, excuse me, you're saying meeting the following minimum standards. You're not saying the standards, these are just the information, as opposed to, there's no standard here that I say, but I understand.
Control point.
Okay, so let's remove that.
I mean, you're just saying, I want this information.
I want the applicant to submit a blast control plan, if applicable. And I want the minimum standards to be addressed, the minimum items, maybe I want to say, to be addressed. So let's change that. But I think what will happen, if you get a site that is a rock site and someone's trying to excavate out, I don't know, 500 yards of rock, you're going to get a plan that's going to address how they're going to do that. From the idea of setting up seismographs to how they're going to blast it, you know, the effort that's going to be put into this, and it needs to be done in order to safeguard the neighborhood and the adjoining properties.
So
We've been
there you
through
go.
that.
So let me ask you this one. The language you had is, if it is anticipated that blasting may be necessary. So there's a lot of minimum things you want. So I
Yes.
guess maybe that should say that blasting will occur. I mean, I think may, you don't know. You're gonna have somebody come into us, right? So I
Yes.
don't think I'm gonna have to blast. Okay? And so I'm gonna give you this plan, and we could say to them under this language, well, you know, you might have to blast, so therefore you gotta give us all the rest of it. And I guess maybe the in-between position would be, if there's going to be any blasting done,
Well,
this is what
wouldn't
you gotta give us.
C be contingent, what you're talking about on B? Because it depends on what the soil investigation and reports
And-
are that
Well,
are
it could be, but
produced.
I'm just saying, if anybody, in order to blast, you gotta give us minimum information. That's the way I would like to see it worded. Because I wouldn't want to put the onus on even the applicant to say, well, I don't think I'm gonna have to blast, but I might have to.
But if they do, then they would, and they had gotten let's say they come to you, they get a permit, and nobody mentions the word blast, and then it turns out they need to blast, they
Well, that's
need
why
to
you
come
put
back,
in- Yeah, that's right.
they
So
need
you
to
put
come
in
back
here-
and amend their application.
Absolutely, so if there is any, no blasting may be done unless it's included, right, with the information that you
That's
require.
better.
Okay.
So tomorrow afternoon, if somebody wants to come in and blast, what they will hear from our counter is, oh, you gotta go see the fire marshal. Because we presently
right.
Have nothing.
have nothing.
Right,
Yeah, we've sat in meetings
How
and said
most
that.
that's not good.
places.
Completely new. So
It's
this
not
is-
us, it's the fire marshal. Yeah.
So we're taking on a new task.
And I agree, but I think it's done like that in other towns.
I don't know either.
Okay.
But we
in-
required it for
in-
that last thing.
If they do my deep test pits, or your deep test pits, and they do them properly,
We'll know.
you're gonna know what kind of material they're excavating, whether it's rock, earth,
And if they need to blast.
correct.
Well,
And this
how, we
section
will know if
starts,
they need to blast. blast.
But this section
I mean,
starts
we
the
may,
commission upon
you know,
finding
come to
of
that
unusual.
conclusion, they may need to blast. Maybe they'll come to that conclusion, but I would think that you just want to be saying you're not blasting unless you've gotten prior approval.
So what if C says, no blasting shall be permitted without
Prior approval,
an approved
an approved
blast
blasting
plan
control plan.
on C?
That's
Just add
really
that.
the way to go. That's a
Yeah.
great idea, please. That makes sense. So if they do test pits and they don't do enough and they get fooled and they get an approval representing that it's all earth or gravel that they're removing and they encounter rock, now they have to come back to you for that approval with a blast plan, which makes sense. I think you want that. And the outline here is a typical outline that should be put together by a blasting company and an engineer. And that would be submitted to you.
What, just question, what's overbreak?
What line item are you on?
C, plans for preventing overbreak.
Is that when more of the rock crumbles?
That
and
is
you take
correct.
it?
That's when you're putting too much charge in and you find that the earth is humped up like this and you have fly rock and you've got all sorts of mess.
Is that one word or is that two words? Just curious.
I don't even know what it is.
You know what?
Make a difference to me.
What I did was I did research on blast plans, and I came up with this outline for you based on my research on what gets submitted for a typical large rock job.
And you've seen applications with this information on it?
Yes. I have done one. Because now when you're out there and doing plans, everyone is very, very concerned about blasting. And the only way to address it is to have something like this in your document and your regulations to protect the neighbors. So it gives an applicant, their engineer, their blasting contractor a guideline for a document to be submitted for your review to make sure it's being a project that is proceeding in a manner that's well thought out, that will be your best step forward to protect the neighborhood.
So can I just, so C on the page previous to the one with all the red on it. No blasting shall be permitted without a blast plan, quote, blast plan, unquote.
It says blasting control plan as well.
Either it's a blast plan or a blasting control plan. Take your
Blast,
pick.
whatever, okay, right now, we're gonna leave it at blast plan,
I don't care.
because I got that out of my mouth.
Fine.
Approved by P&Z and the fire marshal, period. Blasting shall meet the following minimum standards.
And why do we have the fire marshal check these things?
I think
That's
it's
state
state law.
statute.
State requires the fire
State
marshal?
statute, he has to be involved.
Absolutely. It's an explosion, for God's sake.
You can't take care of it?
Should have a license to take care of that, so.
Besides, fire marshals like big bangs and sparks.
Big bang there? Okay. Okay.
Okay, so I guess we're on, I think that's okay. I think the only thing I'd like to do is just read through it once more. I think I have to address pre-blast surveys. Which I will do and get to you. All right.
Is there something already in there about sort of like neighborhood discussion? In other words, there's usually, when you're doing the blast plans, typically allow to all the neighbors.
Pre-blast surveys.
So that's what you're talking about?
Correct.
Pre-blast
We're
survey?
going to add that line.
Okay, and I assume it goes out somewhere within, I don't know how many feet, about 100 feet. So you might want to think about that too.
And
How far up
that's
it
a moving
goes.
target. That's a number that you want to set.
Right.
And if you want, I can do a little research. I
I'm just-
suspect it's
I would
200
think-
feet.
Why, what,
200 to 500 feet.
is too short or too?
I think 100 feet is too short, and it's got to be beyond that.
So I suspect the fire marshal has a specific number in his regulation.
Oh, interesting.
so you want to know what that
Because you want
was.
frontage, 200 feet, 300 feet.
Right. So I agree, we should see what the fire marshal's requirements are, and it should be more than 100 feet. And normally, I think what I see is 200 to 500.
Where
You're right.
where was that? We were correcting other stuff, I'm sorry.
I wanted to add that line somewhere between A and N to deal with pre-blast surveys
So,
and limits that they'll go out to survey. I think it's very, very important. All right,
Does
so,
could I ask one last question?
Yes.
Does the pre-blast survey include information about who was contacted within the neighborhood?
yes.
Or it has photographs of people's houses.
Yeah, well, I remember that, but I always think about it that you don't want to have somebody come in, it's an ultra-hazardous activity, so, it's strict liability.
It's also strict liability.
Right, I understand that.
Blaster
I've been there, done that,
Right,
for
right.
people, but,
Right.
just a lot easier if you have all that upfront information. Okay.
Okay, so I would move on to D, which is under after 2, and I'm talking about a bond estimate shall be based upon the unit cost of the erosion and sedimentation control plan, the installation of stormwater management measures, site stabilization, site restoration, and any other items deemed necessary by the commission, and shall include a 15% contingency.
Which engineer?
Engineer of record.
Okay, because earlier in the section, you talked about the licensed professional geotechnical engineer. So I think you just need to make sure you know what engineer you're talking about. right?
It could be done by the geotech, but normally would not be done. It would be done by the civil engineer producing the plan. The guy doing the surveying, the grading.
So that's what I'm just saying, do we need to be more specific there instead of just
So
saying
could you say
engineers?
engineer of record instead of
Okay.
engineers?
Now, Bob, as we've established bonds in the recent past, what the engineer of record does is propose as part of your review comments, he proposes that unit cost, and either you or you and I agree to it, and then we add a contingency.
That can be done. Or if he adds the contingency and they submit it, we're reviewing the dollar amount assigned so that it's a fair number for the bond. However you want to do it and word it.
I don't believe in fair numbers, I believe in higher than fair.
Just for the record.
Right.
Higher than fair. Okay.
Well, it's an incentive.
It's it's protection.
So do you want to reword this paragraph?
So I'd like to have you consider, including the notion that that they're going to submit their unit costs for review, because there are people, I know it's hard to believe, that will understate their risks.
they're submitting this with the application for the hearing, so it's going to be part of the review process.
Yeah, and I agree, and I think Terry's point, though, is a good point, because sometimes we're getting just a lump sum number,
Right.
and we're not getting the backup, and we have to ask for it, and then sometimes we're having trouble getting it.
Right.
So this will solve a lot of the angst that we go through when we're reviewing an
We've had to
application.
continue meetings about these things because
So
of this.
where we
I
say the
agree,
bond
Jack's on.
estimate,
Shall be broken out,
Yeah.
based upon the unit cost.
Exactly.
Right.
So is that a detailed unit cost?
Yes. So in other words, silt fence, $3.50 a linear foot. We want to see that number and the length of fence they're putting in, so right away you could see if that number was used as 2 or whether it was the real number of 350.
And then I just make the last clause there a sentence on its own. the bond estimate shall include 15% or 20%, whatever you want, contingency.
Well, you could
just
indicate
make it-
15% contingency shall be added on to I'm not even sure.
I just the active versus the passive concept,
Why don't you
but that's
just
okay.
put in a contingency looking at it as opposed to limiting it
That's what
to
I'm saying.
specific amounts?
Based on risk. Right.
The estimate shall include. whatever
Contingency
percent.
to be set by the commission.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
We don't need to have a number.
Yeah, you may get into a little bit of, and I have to confess I'm a little rusty on this one, I haven't had to deal with it in a while. You may get into a little trouble if your number goes high.
So how about if you say a contingency of at least 15% as determined by the commission, something like that?
Well, I think 15% is
Standard?
standard, yes.
So let's say that. We can only say 15%. But all I was saying was make it a separate sentence, then it's stronger.
Okay.
Because you're making the statement at the end that that's what you're doing. It's not a clause at the end of a long sentence.
Did you change anything else in that paragraph? On this engineered record?
The bond estimate shall be broken out based upon, or something to indicate you want it,
Let's go with
upon the
detailed
detailed
unit
unit
cost.
cost.
On the detailed
And
unit,
then I,
Yes,
as a
yeah.
commissioner, period, and then you say, the bond estimate shall also include a 50% contingency, period, end of sentence.
Okay. 3.4A. Yep, so the operation shall be carried out conforming with the grading plan as approved and within the limits shown thereon and shall be at least 50 feet from any property line or public road, so I added 50 feet. No excavation or blasting of rock shall occur within 50 feet of any property line or public road unless otherwise authorized by the commission. The commission may require greater distance if they deem it necessary.
Do we have to have a reason for that?
I think you could use any sort of reasons from this kind of material they're taking out to improvements adjacent to it, to the slope of the land beyond it. I think that this language gives you lots of latitude to protect
Well, I
the
was afraid
adjoining
it
properties.
was too vague. It's
Oh.
like, we're gonna have to go through the trouble of giving in-depth reasons why we...
There are so many strictures on this, on blasting now, and on any sort of excavation. With this, compared to what we faced before that, it would
Well, that's-
really be a pretty unique situation,
Yeah.
right?
But I think it gives you an option to actually increase it if you need to. And I think a court looking at it would probably say, is it a reasonable restriction? Why do they do it? As long as you have reasons that you put on the record. Usually they're upheld as long as you can point to them as sufficient.
Whether they're right or wrong. Okay.
So we're okay, do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, going on to G. There again, this is something that we should think about. We're talking about slopes, both of earth and rock. And we say 2 horizontal to 1 vertical, and that pertains to general earth excavation. And I put in here, rock slope shall be graded to a maximum slope of 1 to 1. Now, to put this in perspective, when you drive down 95 in some areas and you look at rock cuts,
Those are steeper.
a lot of engineers will do 6 vertical to 1 horizontal. And they do that without thinking about how hard the rock is and the effort of what is going to be blasted. That creates all sorts of openings and cracks. And if you go down 95, you'll see Jersey barriers at all these rock slopes because the rock actually over time weathers, freeze thaws, and peels off. If you do it a 1-to-1 slope, you're getting a better, more stable slope. But having said all that, I think I've added that it could be steeper And then we're back to the geotechnical engineer again, certifies the stability of the rock.
Can we just use the same language we used earlier when we talked about the
Professional
geotechnical?
geotechnical
Yes.
engineer, got it.
We did have a geotechnical engineer who looked as if he hadn't been in the field in a while, as I recall.
So, to be safe, the one-to-one with most rock slopes, I think all rock slopes that you'll see come before you, you never could get in trouble. And when you get to the ones that are any steeper than that, you really want to get the geotechnical involved.
Where, so where we got, I didn't say it before either, where does it say that a certain slope can't be?
We're on G,
Yeah.
and I say, so that banks and slopes in disturbed areas shall be no steeper than 2 to 1, period. Rock slopes shall be graded to a
Okay.
maximum of slope of 1 to 1, and I give you the latitude to approve slopes steeper than 1 to 1.
A rock slope.
But does that take into account, that still lets you excavate things? I'm saying there's certain areas, certain slopes that shouldn't be touched. I mean, yes, 1 to 1 is great, but right now, the natural slope is X.
Yeah.
You're
it
talking
should
about
be-
preservation of,
Should be consistent.
Well, I mean, I think in Westport, they don't let you, certain slopes, they say, no, you can't cut into that, you can't touch it.
How do they determine which slopes?
No, I was starting to look it up to see, but they,
Okay.
no,
Okay.
they know what slopes.
Fine.
So typically
Is there a
steep slopes
criteria?
are 25% grades. 2 feet in 7 is a 25% grade. So if you want to incorporate that, that's fine, but the only thing I would,
Write that down, 2 feet instead, because I've always wondered what a 25% slope is.
we have a section in section 5, basic standards, that talks about the preservation of special features that should include.
So for instance, the
No, the other way.
property that goes to Main Street, for instance,
yes,
what was that slope?
that was the 6 vertical to 1 horizontal. That was straight up.
So to me,
And-
that was like, you shouldn't have touched it.
And that is correct. It never could get to the point where we could, there was, the applicant couldn't answer the question about the rock falling off the hill, in my eyes.
I think he's saying we shouldn't have allowed it to be developed.
In the first place.
In the first place. Which is what this is going to ultimately indirectly cause, right?
I hope.
Because we're saying we
That's what I'm
can't.
hoping. I think that there are certain sites that are steep enough, should not be touched.
And I would agree with that, 100%.
I mean, as we talked about it before, a lot of these pieces of property were developed looking on a map, flat map. No one even knows what they're looking at. And oh yeah, we could put a house there because it's 43,000 square feet.
Paper's flat. Just the paper's flat.
And they
The
didn't
biggest
have,
flag.
and they didn't have a T2 survey.
No, not even close. So I'm just thinking that it's,
So in,
what, I would like us to have something in there so that we could have just said, no, this is not buildable. I don't want to buy it as a building lot, it isn't buildable.
So that really belongs in your general regulations, I would think.
let me read
And,
what
but
is in
you
here.
have, the problem that you have is you have 2 different things going on. Your current regulations, when you go to create a lot, require that they have a buildable square inside it, that can't have slopes over 25%. So you require that any new lots that are created aren't created with those kinds of stumbling blocks. The issue that you face with the one that you've been talking about is this was an approved lot in the subdivision from long ago. So either you're gonna have it as a taking, that the town then takes it and takes the right of way of that to be a subdivision.
Is that what the town would do if it was a wetlands issue on that piece of property? It was flat and there were wetlands issues, would the town come? I mean,
The
look at
statute-
hold on, look at the property that was across the street from, which is now Sharon Ducat's house. forget the people, it doesn't really matter what the name is.
McLaughlin.
And they wanted that property, and they wanted to develop it, and it was approved building lots, and they were told no.
Because the statutes
No better time.
relative
Now
to
it is.
inland wetlands gave you, if lots were approved, you had until a certain date certain to be able to develop it as of right. And after that time, you had to get a permit. And because of that, there have been any number of lots in town, including that one, which have ended up not being developed because there was just too much wetlands on it. But there's a state statute that specifically said that you had to have a building permit in place by 1987 for lots that were created prior to the Wetland Act.
And so was the town required to buy that piece of property?
I don't know.
I don't
They-
know the specifics, way before me, so I don't.
I mean,
Is it
we've
really
had
required?
some lots that have been given to the town once it's been determined that they weren't developable. So,
So Jeff, in
And it's a state statute, it's not
What we
town
have-
regulation.
Right.
in the proposed regulations is preservation of special features, and it's a long sentence.
Yeah.
The applicant shall preserve special features that enhance the value of a development and/or a community. Special features shall be preserved, to be preserved, include but are not limited to large individual trees, groves or stands of trees, brooks, streams, ponds, creeks, waterfalls, lakes, wetlands, and their adjacent buffer areas, historic landmarks, scenic vistas, overlooks, and ridgelines. And we talked about adding stone walls, and we can add slopes in excess of to
I
that.
think we should, because
Okay.
I mean, I agree, it wouldn't happen now,
yeah.
because we have better surveying.
Well,
So
you might
we
as well
actually-
say
we
it.
actually
You might
use
as well say it.
So what would be an appropriate percentage for this one? Or ratio?
I think that we should consider 25% or 30%. I mean, when you're getting beyond, when you're doing a lot, slopes of 25% do not count as part of the lot area. So do you want to use that as the standard test, or do you want to be somewhere on the 30% or 35% range?
And let's say it's
I'm kind of
25%,
torn,
I
to
think.
be honest with you.
Yeah, okay, but let's say it is 25%. So then they can come along and say, okay, well, are we saying you can't touch that lot if there's, you can't touch
No, you
that
can't touch
25%? So in other words,
where
they
the
can't come along and
slope is
say,
or
yeah, I'm gonna
something.
blast it out of there so it'll be flat when I get done.
Right,
We wanna avoid that altogether.
okay.
I think 25% of the buildings on should be 30 or 35%. You want to have a little language.
And I agree with you, to be honest with you. I think that, it's very common in town to have 25% slopes, and they are generally pretty stable in their natural state. So I would think you want to be 35%. It's a special feature that you're trying to maintain, not the normal.
Somebody give me a
But-
number.
30. It's the middle between 25 and 35.
27. So I'm just realizing that my house wouldn't exist today because
Would
of
not.
the slopes we have, the wetlands nearby. It's just-
Beecher Road would be there. Johnson Road would be there.
Falling water
Burnt
wouldn't
swamp.
exist.
Well,
Yeah.
Let's talk about Burnt
Always.
Swamp.
Yeah.
I guess the
have
question
to-
is
I
there
have to
a
go,
number?
and my husband's gonna kill me.
Let's assume for
They're
the
very
number
old,
there.
I would have-
Get a variance, so you think, okay, so there's simply a reg,
I gotta make sure I
an
do.
opportunity to get a variance, and that would be due to the nature and character of the land, which would be, certainly something that variance would address.
So how do we stop that?
Well, you have a higher number. You have 35 instead
Well,
of
it's
30.
still
I
would be-
just,
Well, if they're going for a variance, you're going for a variance.
and then you get people.
Well, what I'm saying is,
saying-
I think if I'm a court and I'm listening to this, and I've got a great variance between the 25, so it goes up to 35, I think the opportunity to get a variance and have it upheld is less.
Because of 35 as opposed to 30?
Well, you still have to go through the
Still gotta get through the local.
Sorry, I gotta go.
Maybe not.
I gotta go.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you.
Welcome. See everybody. Enjoy
Happy-
Memorial Day weekend.
Happy summer.
You too. Thanks.
Thanks.
We'll be there before you know it. Have a good Memorial Day. Okay.
So if I may, on slopes,
Oh, I think he's
River.
okay.
10 and 40 is 25%, 10 and 30 is 33%. 10 and 30 is very, very steep, so if you did
Yeah.
35,
So
now
33%.
you have a very special feature.
Okay, that's fair.
So what number am I putting in?
35%.
35%.
35%.
35?
Yes.
So steep. Let's screw around with it.
All right. All right, so 2 is talking about fencing, at least 5 feet in high. And then 3 maybe should,
I don't,
Should we call out what kind of fencing that is? Should it be,
can,
page fence?
Yeah, what kind of fence do they usually have?
there's no fence out, there's no grow fences out there, so before anybody gets there, there's no fence out there.
right,
So why do
and
we suddenly say we're gonna, because I can't think of something, I can't really think of an attractive fence that someone's gonna put up there.
I agree
Because
with
this,
that.
they're gonna guess, oh, chain link. Who wants to look at that?
And I was, when I wrote this, I was concerned about the neighbor and going a little bit out of his, onto this property, let's say, or someone walking and enjoying the property, and then finding there's a 30-foot cut there. So by having a fence on the top of it, especially if you get into the rock part of this, like on one application you looked at, you would want some type of fence there.
Is it our responsibility to do that? I mean, guy's
Not
got a piece of
necessarily.
property, he's got the cut, it's his property. I mean, now we're gonna start telling people they have to put a fence in the middle of their property so that if somebody happens to cross
Trespass.
property lines, trespass, exactly,
Okay.
and then they fall, we can say to the guy, oh, you should have put a pre-chain link fence.
Okay, we can take it out.
Yeah, I'm not happy about that. Okay.
So let's
We're
take it out.
taking 2 out completely.
Yep.
So you're not requiring it, but I guess the question is, would it be possible to ever have it? It's the other half of it.
It's a special exception. You can add it as a condition of approval if you have reason
Right,
to.
so I think that you don't want it eradicated from the thought of the discussion process.
No, I think it should come out. I think it's a silly
The
thing.
homeowner can always install it
They
if
can,
they
you
want.
can do
'cause
whatever
if
you
it's
want,
less
it's your
than
property,
6
you're
feet
really,
in height,
you're
it
really
doesn't
stepping over the
require a
boundary
permit.
here.
Well, sometimes you do it, sometimes it's like a fence around a pool,
It's not,
okay?
I don't, it's not.
Well, I agree with it coming out, I
Yeah.
just suggested that maybe in
Attractive
certain
nuisance.
cases, it might be an item of discussion. And the question is, can you put it in, I think you were suggesting you could.
And the reason why I include it is because a lot of regulations do include it, and that doesn't make it right, but I wanted you to discuss it tonight.
And also, by the way, if we're gonna compare it to a pool fence, that means we
No, I'm-
then have to be very specific about what the fence is,
No,
because
no,
you're not
no,
allowed to
no,
use a
no, I'm
chain link
just saying-
fence. You're not allowed to use a fence that someone can climb over. So what happens if we turn around and pick up a fence, okay, we're gonna put a fence there, and the guy climbs over, what does that mean? It means, where was the fence at? I mean, I think it's really telling.
I don't know,
people.
it's not like Trump's wall now, but it's okay, let's stop there.
Well, we certainly don't want to,
We don't want to have that discussion.
Well, I want a concrete fence.
Just tell them, fence, wall, I mean, figure it out.
It's not a fence, it's a wall.
Okay, let's see.
So why don't we take out 2 and 3? Because we've already addressed.
We've already addressed it.
Yes, agreed, 100%. All right. Truck access. Barred by a gate unless otherwise approved by the commission, so I'm giving you a little bit of latitude.
Yeah, so let's, why do we want, I mean, don't we always have a latitude? Why? I think that we should just say, we either want a gate or we don't want a gate. And what would be the reason on these sites to not have a gate? Because we don't want them to spend money on a gate? Or if that's the reason, then I
think
say
on
put
the-
the gate in.
Yeah, and I think a large project with, slopes, and they're excavating along, and they're very, very vertical and unstable, you want to stop the public from going onto the property by adding this gate. And I think that's standard in all regulations.
So I agree, so I don't know,
I would
You might
actually,
not always know.
it says unless otherwise approved by the commission,
Here's
so,
the
because
problem
everybody
with
comes
that.
and says, we don't really want to put the gate up
Yeah, they ask for a waiver.
all the time, so I
Agreed.
forget it. I don't know why we keep.
Because if it's a residential lot that requires a permit, it may not need a gate.
I agree.
Yes,
But if it's a large-scale project, it may need a gate.
And
yes.
we've exempted
A bunch of residential lots.
Lots
Yes,
without
I know.
gates.
you can exempt, can I make a suggestion that you exempt, I'm a little concerned about, there's case law on some of this stuff, Mackenzie on giving P and Z commissions too much, the ability to waive their own regulations, and it can get you into a legal quagmire. So my suggestion is that maybe you say, under age, that it's, I'm sorry, no. You exempt single-family houses or two-family houses, or by acreage to the site or something like that. And then they can go for a variance if they don't want to put the gate up.
A variance or, well,
I would take out the language that says unless otherwise approved by the commission. I think
yeah,
that that gets you-
that's the thing that's concerning.
I think you get in
That's all
trouble with
everybody does.
Mackenzie.
Nobody ever wants to put it up there.
Yeah, but as Chris said, in a single-family site,
Well, so let's
They
go
never
by
put it
what
up.
So you
Leslie
can
says.
exclude that right there.
So you can take out some.
All access to any, and when you talk about the operation,
The perfect example to compare things, by the way, there's no question that a sand and gravel pit needs a gate, and that's, just for their own protection, quite frankly. But, for example, the present, the last one you approved was, Peter Olson's on the end of things, it was a residential neighborhood, asked for a waiver of the gate, sensible, reasonable, request that was granted because, the gate is appropriate in that set of circumstances.
And I'm sorry, what was that for?
It was for an excavation permit in support of a construction of a new city.
What,
So I'm saying if we exempt single family, we can even exempt,
Well, we have to be careful because I think we just have to say individual residential lots because you're allowing two-family houses
That's
to be
what I
built,
was
so
gonna-
you can't say that. So, but if you just say, except for development of individual residential and individual residential lot, accesses to any operation shall be barred by a gate. Because then it's just one lot, it's not the whole subdivision, so if a subdivision's being developed, you may want it barred.
well, the way
Nothing.
it would read, if it's a subdivision, it has to be barred.
Yeah. But if we say, except
single and two-family homes.
for
I
development
would say
of
just single, I don't-
individual lots,
Two-family.
individual residential lots.
yeah, and individual residential lot.
Well, single family.
Well, because you're allowing two families and this could,
No, we're not. I'm saying single family homes.
That was the
so
exemption we're talking about.
if somebody who's in another district that meets the criteria, which is less than an acre, they have to put up a gate.
First of all, what's the big deal about this gate? I mean, it's not like an 8-foot fence. What doesn't blend into a neighborhood, by the way? People can put up 4- and 5-foot fences on their property, so I'm not sure what neighborhood is a fence not, doesn't go with the neighbor. I don't really understand that. I think it's a safety issue, so.
So you think, Chad, that any type of construction that's going to be done under these regs here, which are removal of soil, right? Need a gate. Everyone needs a gate.
I think that, I'm not saying I'm opposed to saying single-family homes, but
Okay.
I'm thinking back, what fits into a neighborhood, I don't know, anybody can put up a fence on that property, so what gate are we putting up that people aren't, we're not saying it has to be fluorescent orange.
It's usually page fence,
I mean, it's a gate,
chain, it's usually
not even
the
that
chain.
tall.
It's usually,
So, I mean, I get the single-family homes, that's fine, but after that, I think you should put a gate up. What's the
Yeah, well,
big
you
deal?
have individual residential lots. Does that make sense?
I said except for, individual development of an individual residential lot.
Well, we can,
Yeah, to tweak that. See what
we
it
made
is.
our point, we can tweak it anytime. Okay.
Okay. I do think, back to Leslie's expressed concern, that if we have too broad a standard that we can operate by, you could be in some violation of case law. But I do think that if you made exceptions, so you made determinations based upon factual information that was presented, which made sense, then you would be upheld.
So, I mean, we're talking about putting a fence on a piece of property where someone's digging a huge hole, and we're worried about putting a fence at the top of a steep slope. We're not worried about somebody falling into a hole.
No, I think we are. Yeah, I think we are.
Right.
Doesn't have to be all.
Doesn't work?
Doesn't have to be a big hole.
Well, if you're putting in a basement.
Work it out.
All right, so I put in the words, if determined to be necessary by the commission, and this pertains to yellow markers spaced a maximum of 50 feet apart, extending a minimum of 2 feet above the ground in all towns around the perimeter. So I did that because they keep asking for waivers of that, and then some of these residential lots, I don't think it's really necessary if you're doing minor grading and you exceed the threshold, but your decision on whether you want to leave that in or not, I thought it might make sense. Access roads back to M shall be provided and maintained with dusted surface and crushed stone, shall be 100 feet, and I just kept that in keeping with the 2002 S&E guidelines and exceeding it. And then O, all materials used as fill shall be non-combustible. Tree stumps, logs, other materials shall not be used as fill material on-site burial.
It's great, it's a great ad. We suffered the indignities of that happening in the 60s, 50s and 60s here, and we never had it as a part of regulation.
Well, I will
so-
tell you that so many towns have.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, what usually happen is someone would be engaged in the burial of some of that material, and then someone would finally make a complaint to the CEO of whatever the town was, and then every once in a while, the CEO might find some time to go out there. By the time the person went out there, of course, it had stopped, so therefore there wasn't cease and
I
desist.
caught them at it, and without a regulation, had to be moved.
Okay, now I have a
That's
question.
better.
Because this only applies to sites that are issued permits under this section. So is this the kind of thing that we...
Should be
I thought
general for everything?
We had standard conditions in the regs that applied to everything, whether it was exempt or not. And it seems to me that this is the kind of thing that
That's a good point.
should be.
Sure.
Yes, I agree.
That should go under general as opposed to, yeah, because if you're exempt, you don't have to comply.
You don't have to comply with this.
Good point.
It's tree stumps, 6 feet.
All right, P is topsoil stockpiles shall be located so as, to not obstruct natural drainage. And then that if they're left up more than 30 days, that they get seeded, which I think makes sense, and we always require that. So we're trying to remove some of those comments that we have. The next one is just your old one, we just inserted it. So we're really going all the way to, C. 3.6C at the end. Shall be deemed sufficient cause for denial of a renewal. And E, no permit shall be transferred by the applicant unless approved by you guys. And H has been added. So we're dealing with violations, and we're allowing the commission to revoke the permit and impose a fine of $100 a day.
Should this be applicable, this provision, to any special permit, not just for excavation? Because we have special permits in other areas.
And there will be a section.
And that's why I'm saying, should this be in a general section?
So it could go under enforcement.
Sure.
You know, it's a companion language that is very similar to what's in the Wetlands Act.
Yeah.
In fact, I think that's a little bit more strict because
Thank you.
as an enforcement officer,
It's
that's
hard to do this. You sit down and you read it and then you think
Just
about
start
it.
adding other things in there.
Yes, and then you worry about whether you have everything covered.
You don't, that's the
No,
one.
you got the majority of it.
And
The fine,
That's
is
good.
that by
Thank you.
town ordinance?
Thank you.
And then the test is coming.
Or
So originally
by-
set up through town ordinance.
It's usually, fines are usually by town
Yeah,
ordinance.
it's usually.
I didn't bring mine.
And I don't know if,
Finance tonight, did you pull?
Zoning regs
Some of this
under
stuff is going in the
enforcement
general stuff.
have reference to fines.
but is it fines that's set forth in the,
In a state statute.
Well, I think the state statute allows the towns to, by ordinance, decide how they want to.
yeah, but I
set
thought it was by
fines.
ordinance as opposed to by
It
zoning
is,
regulation.
but, you know, it's basically, state statute says towns can do it.
So we may
do
need
it
to
in ordinance.
amend this in
Exactly,
reference to an ordinance.
Exactly. That's what I was getting to.
And the board of select, or the alternate.
So we'll check it.
So everybody ready to go through another section?
Oh, sure. Wake me.
That would be very difficult.
Oh, we got through one entire section.
Actually, I thought this was going to go
Yes.
faster.
Oh, my goodness.
Just saying.
It really was comprehensive. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess we
Set up
won't.
another meeting. So
Are you going away for any more like
no,
2 month
I'm done.
vacations?
It was not 2 months. I was at a conference for 1 week, and my son got married.
When we got a 6? Just
Could this be?
So not the way it went down.
I don't know, I saw pictures of hiking.
Yeah, we spent 3 days at Glacier National Park. There was a lot of hiking that happened in 3 days.
Yeah.
Try to get a place in there during the summer.
No,
Zero.
no.
They're booking for 2018. Unbelievable.
But it's absolutely worth it. The real trick
Oh, we've been
is...
there twice already.
Oh, okay, so you know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
We
The
stayed
trick
in
is
all
to
the
get-
lodges, including Waterman up in Canada.
Okay, we didn't get that far. We were on Amtrak. We were taking the train back across the country.
So, Chris, why don't we do a poll like the,
What dates are you looking at?
well, I was worried about, I have something on June 14th, but I see it's Flag Day, so I'm thinking. we don't
It is
worry
Flag
about
Day.
June
There's a
14th.
picnic in Shelton at lunchtime,
that.
if you're available.
So the week of the 12th and the week of the 19th.
That's fine.
And And which days do you want me to check? Because the 12th ZBA has a meeting.
That would be a bad night then.
Because they've got lots of stuff on the agenda.
Can we try for Tuesday? Tuesday or Wednesday? I definitely, I can't do Thursday.
Thursday or the 14th or the 20th and 21st the following week.
Tuesday and Wednesday. Thursdays are impossible.
Okay, so we're saying Tuesday, Wednesday.
Tuesday, Wednesday,
That would be the 13th and 14th.
yes.
And the following week it would be the 20th and the 21st.
And I think that's
Yeah.
good too.
There you go.
So I'll also check to see if the room in the town hall is free.
What does room do then?
From the
They're all the
13th,
same.
we're probably on the 20th, so I'm going to try. We'll see what happens.
Which, I know you lawyers.
Called Preparation Plus.
It's called, let's get a continuance.
Probably, it could happen,
I know.
but I'm not sure it
Do
will.
we have to make a formal motion to adjourn?
I just have one silly question. To the best of my knowledge, the applications that you have coming in for your regular meeting in June have to go to public hearing. So there would be, do you want to try to do anything at your regular meeting on the
I mean,
5th?
so in effect, there's nothing for the regular meeting.
You're receiving applications and you're going to have
Does
a
that
discussion
work for
about
you?
potential site development, but it's not going to take hours.
It's the 5th.
What day of the week?
Monday.
I can do Monday.
It's a regular meeting.
So do
So
you
I
want to
think
try
we
to do a short section like 2? You're definitely, I think that was one of the ones you talked about.
Yeah, let's also try to settle the meeting those other days too, but let's try
Yeah,
to
no,
be good that.
but I'm just saying, you know,
So-
you might
It's
as
a
well
good
take
idea.
advantage of.
So you're gonna try to do section 2 on that Monday?
Wait, Rich, can we just be really, we need to do
For,
the two sections that we still really need to go over. I gave everybody the bulk comparison chart. I think I gave you nice color copies, I'm supposed to, so that we could look at at section 4, the bulk regulations.
Okay.
And that's nice looking.
right.
Yeah, I copied those, so I can put those in the packet.
And then, so that's all bulk.
Okay.
So if you do that for the 5th.
5th. Great, good idea.
Okay.
You wanna make a
One of
motion
those
now?
alternates for the 5th.
I didn't know if we needed a motion.
Just for the heck of it.
Sure, I'll make a motion.
Okay.
And Alan second. Alan and Alan.